Welcome to another training movie of Canto Roboflow. In this movie I'm going to show you how you can calculate with fields, add, make a counter, and make the sum of all the file sizes in your catalog. So if you look inside the catalog, it's a hot collection catalog, and a hot collection catalog does a query into a catalog and then processes the records one by one. I have no query, which means a find all. I want to make a count of all my records, and I want to make a sum of the file sizes. And I have configured myself to be notified via email if for the result. I also added a little parameter, a yes/no parameter. I added a test in my workflow to test for offline assets or not, if the files are available or not. So by default I've set it to no, but if you enable it, it will also process the records. It will also check the assets of the records. So the workflow itself has a counter. So a counter needs to be initialized, set to 0. So that is something that I do before the first item is processed. So that is why my script starts with a test, testing if this is the first item of the loop. The loop is when the workflow is executed. So if this is the case, I initialize 3 variables: count files, count file missing, and size files. There are no integers or doubles or whatever in Cumulus that you can work with. Cumulus works with text. Roboflow works with text. So all calculations are stored in a text field. No worries behind the scenes. Roboflow nicely converts this into doubles, so you have the ability to make large calculations. I initialize a variable here called count files, and I prefix it with the name global. The reason for doing that is because each variable that I create normally inside my script only exists during the execution of that script, which means for record 1 I create some variables. If they're local, this next time for record 2 these variables don't exist anymore and are recreated. So we don't want that if we want a counter that persists across all records. That is why I prefix the name of the variable with global. This tells Roboflow to store it on the same level as the parameters, which are also globally stored. So I initialize these 3 variables to 0, and then the first thing I do is I increment a text value, being the count files, with 1, because that is what is happening. I have here my first file, so, and the next, and the next, and the next. So each time I come in this script, I add 1. Then the next thing I do is I pick up a field value from the current record. The current record is offered to the workflow under the tag hot. So that is why it appears here in the drop down, and you can select it. And I use file data size. Now in newer versions of Cumulus there is also a field called asset data size, which is better because that is a 64-bit long variable, which means that it can take up to 2 terabyte or something as file size, while the normal file data size has a problem as soon as the file is bigger than 2 or 4 gigabytes. And so please remember that should you have files that are bigger, then you should use the other field if you have it, of course, in your catalog. So I'm storing the size under a variable, a tag called size. And then the next thing I do is I test if it's greater than 0, which is important. Could be that I'm asking for a file that returns null or size, or returns an empty value because there is no file size perhaps. Then I don't want to process those. So I want to be sure that my size is greater than 0. The next thing I want to test is that it's not a sub-asset. I want to make sure that the asset, the file, is not a sub-asset. A sub-asset being, for instance, a page of a PDF, a slide of a PowerPoint presentation, because those files are already part, the size of those files is already specified in the main file, in the master file, so the related records would only have the same file size, so you would duplicate while it's not the case. And these records, the sub-asset records, have no file size, should not have or should not count for file size. So then I increment my value, and so I get the global size files and I add the size. And I store it in the same variable. And then optionally, this is maybe something you can remove, I output the file size and the total size at that point, so you can see it progress in your log file. This is good for testing purposes, but maybe in once the workflow is running properly for you, then you should not keep that in there, I think. An additional example that I added is that you can test if a record, first I test for a variable that I created, if I want to test for offline assets, and then inside that, if it's set to yes, I'm actually testing if the asset is available. It's a test record conditional instruction action, and it's using the hot record, and the type of test is test if the asset is available. If it's not available, then it just skips it. It then outputs it here into the log, and it counts, it adds the counter of missing files. So if you have this enabled, then it will run a little bit slower, but it will give you a count of how many files are missing, and you will in your log also get a line item saying missing asset. Then for each record, when this is processed, it will test if this was the last record of the loop. Because if it's the last record of the loop, at that point I want to output in my log file the result: total files, total missing files, and total num file size in number of bytes. If you want, you could even recalculate this to, for instance, kilobyte or megabyte. All you would have to do in that case is use a calculation instruction. You will notice if you go to text that for calculating here you have the ability to increment, but there is no possibility here to to multiply or divide. If you want to achieve that, what you need to do is use inline scripting. So the inline scripting you can find under script help here, scripting help, and then you will find a section called mathematical instructions, and those mathematical instructions or calculation functions are multiply, divide, round, sum, and subtract. So you can say, okay, divide a value by something else. So if I want to use this, I can, and it will always round, so you will not get digits behind the comma. So if I close this and I go to my output here, I could say that I want to divide this by, and so not the missing files, of course, here the tag of the global files. I can say, okay, I want to do a division. Now, here we go. I want to divide this by, so semicolon, and I want to say 1024. So this is one option. If you say, sorry, 24. So I can end here with a hash, but it's safer to end with the same instruction. And if you want to be 100% sure that the division is only executed after it picked up the tag value, it's better to surround it with hash. And then instead of bytes, you could say it's kilobytes. If you want to change it into megabytes, well, then you would just have to get your calculator and find out what 1000 times 1024,000 times 1024 is. I'm doing it for you. That would be 1 million, and so I could say 1 million and 48 and 576, and then we could say here that we have megabyte. Okay, so that's how easy this is. If I now start the workflow, I can do show log. At this point it is calculating. If you have a large catalog, this could run a couple of hours, so don't be surprised. And then when it has processed all files, at the end it says that it has a number of megabytes, and yeah, I said it didn't do comma, but I was wrong. It does do commas, so we can round this. I'll show you that in a moment, so that we don't have a number behind the comma. The reason for the mail not being sent is just that my mail server is not configured, so it just outputs what would have been in the mail in your log file. So let's quickly do the round. So if I want here at the end, I want to do a round, I can have a look in the help again, but I think it's very straightforward. It's just round, but this way you can get an idea of how to find these instructions. And here you have the round, and then you can say the number of digits. Sorry. So here I'm just doing copy paste, and then I'm putting the round in front of it. And of course, as I said before, make sure that it executes the instructions in the order that you want them executed. So I'm now surrounding the hash sign with 2 @ so it knows that it first has to get this tag instruction, then it knows it has to do this divide, and then finally it does the round. And so now closing the round, here is semicolon 0. I don't want any digits, and there's my round. And then I have to say like this, and this is megabytes. If I do OK and OK, and let's test it again. Show log, and here we go to the end of my log file, and now it says 80 megabytes. So that's how simple it is to get this working. Files missing is of course not calculated, so don't mistakenly think that your files are all present. if you have a look here in the catalog and you would change in the workflow and you would change this to yes, it would check every asset. But that makes it, of course, a little bit slower. So let's say in a 50,000 record catalog where it maybe takes 10 minutes or 15 minutes to calculate the size, suddenly it might take 30 minutes to calculate the size because you're asking it for every individual record to give that specific test. Okay, so thank you for joining another Roboflow training, and let me know if you have any questions.